scallops been in the news quite a lot over the last 2 weeks over Christmas. Going back just around about Christmas, it was announced by the Isle of Man that they were going to introduce different or new licence requirements for scallop fishing in our territorial waters on the 8th of January. That was then put back and is now coming in effect this Monday on the 15th. First off, could you explain exactly what we were intending to do with these changes to the licence agreements and indeed why we were doing them?
I mean, to start with the second question, why are we doing them? The Isle of Man waters have become the most intensively fished for scallop waters in the whole of the British Isles. And it got to the stage where it's simply unsustainable. So the department has been working closely with the industry and with the Scallop Board to look at some really quite practical and applied management measures which effectively mean taking less fish. So at the beginning of the season, we introduced a maximum allowable catch, a total allowable catch, and the intention of that is to make sure that we leave enough fish that they can breed and there'll be more for next year and the year after and so on. And as we started the season, we broke that down, so that meant there was a daily amount that could be taken. So that was the season started in November, and we monitor on a daily and weekly basis. And before Christmas, there was some concerns expressed by the industry and the Scallop Board that there was some evidence of misreporting. And just to explain what we mean by misreporting, effectively, there was concerns. Well, I will actually go further, and we duly looked at that. We looked at the catch records, and we got quite clear indications that there is misreporting, and that means that some boats, accidentally or intentionally, were taking more scallops from our waters than they were allowed. But then when they fished in other areas, they were probably declaring them from there. And so we could see some people were getting fantastic results in other areas that others weren't getting there. So it does really suggest they probably were taking more out of our waters than they were supposed to and then declaring it against other areas. So we'd got a situation where if we didn't act, everyone else would feel under pressure to do the same, because there's a limited pot of fish there, and if everyone else is taking more than their fair share, you either join in and get your share before it's gone, or you lose out. So we had to do something quickly, and the Fisheries Management Agreement empowers us to take emergency measures, and there's a much lower level of consultation expected around those, and effectively we bring in what we think's right, and if with hindsight it was wrong, well, we have to change that.
Now, the one issue which has been causing it seemingly a sticky point over the last few weeks is this measure being brought in now to basically say, right, if Scottish fishing boats, for example, were taking scallops out of our Manx territorial waters, they were going to have to report their catch by landing, in essence, or coming into a Manx port to report this, rather than just doing it electronically. That has now been amended, so the measure coming in on the 15th, this coming Monday, will now say basically if you're fishing solely in Manx waters, then you can carry on doing that. But if you've been fishing previously outside of our territorial limit, then fishing in Manx waters, you will then have to carry on and report your catch on the Isle of Man by actually coming to the Isle of Man. Now, this would appear to have certainly upset the Scottish side of things, who are saying, well, this just isn't on, and now, in essence, we're being accused of being in breach of the FMA, as I see it.
That's a good analysis, Howard, yes. But I mean, it's important to acknowledge that there's a whole range of different countries fishing in the waters, and I think all of them have got concerns because, of course, this does impact on their business. That's not why we're doing it. Obviously, we're doing it to control the fishing because we need to make sure there are fish left for the future. And we've put a lot of effort into trying to identify different ways of doing this, but fundamentally we have to find a way of making sure people don't take more than their fair of fish, or there will be none left before the end of the season, never mind next year and future years. So we have tried to find an amendment from the original proposals that would make it less intrusive for those operating here. And given that the issue is about a situation where people have fished in two different areas, then obviously if they've only fished in our waters, we don't want to cause them to come into our ports. So it's trying to find an easier solution, especially for those boats fishing at the north end of the island, where actually they're as close to their home ports quite often as they are to ours. But about 85% of the effort is the south and the middle of the island, where quite frankly they're going past the port anyway, but I appreciate it's still an intrusion to have to come in.
So are we confident, and I appreciate not coming from the political side of things here, you're more hands-on within the actual practicalities, as you say, of the stocks and conserving our stocks, which, as you say, without the stocks there's no industry in any case, but there seems to be a disagreement between the Isle of Man and Scotland of whether we are in breach of the fisheries management agreement or not. I mean, is that something that's got to be sorted out at a political level?
It's one of the areas we've discussed with them this week. I guess it's understandable in these situations, and I've certainly heard the Minister saying that it's a fairly effective way to negotiate, to claim people are breaching things. We obviously wouldn't have proceeded if we thought we were in breach, and we really do think that we have used the emergency procedures appropriately.
So where can we go from here, I suppose, is the next question, in that the Scottish Rural Economy Secretary Fergus Ewing is basically saying, right, he wants more meetings, and he's basically, I don't know whether inviting is the right word, but he's asking for representatives from the Manx government to go across to Scotland and, in essence, I suppose, thrash this out.
And I'm sure there will be a lot of conversations this week, as there were last week. And in fact, the ministers were speaking last week, and I'm sure they'll speak again this week.
It is a tricky, it's not necessarily a new issue. This has been going on for quite a few years. It is apparent that obviously you do have to conserve your stocks. Are we unilateral on this? Is it something that we do seem to be very active on it? Are we more active than our neighbours? Or, I mean, I suppose it's in all our interests, whether you're fishing out of Northern Ireland, whether you're fishing out of Britain, whether you're fishing out of Scotland, it's in all our interest to have a sustainable industry. You know, no scallops, no industry, end of game.
I guess there's a chicken and egg thing going on, in that we've got more boats fishing in our waters than we've ever had before, and it's a really dramatic change in the last 10 years. So we're having to manage much more intensively, or we simply would have nothing left. And it's always hard to say, so are they coming here because we're successfully managing? Because we are, I think, more actively managing than some other areas. And I think there's a good argument to say because of that, we are managing to conserve more stocks, so we're becoming a better fishing ground and a more attractive fishing ground. And certainly there was a report published by Seafish, which is an organisation based in Edinburgh, within the last few weeks, that very clearly identifies that the Isle of Man waters are becoming scallop fish central for the British Isles.
And just finally, do you think going forward we really could do with more work jointly, as it were? So rather than the Isle of Man beaving away off our own bat, doing some very good work here for our territorial waters, do you think really it's a time for us all to get together with our neighbouring fishing nations for all our interests and for all the waters around this part of the world to try and conserve stocks, rather than each perhaps concentrating on their own little area and leading to these sort of issues seemingly?
You're absolutely on the nail. That would make so much difference. And importantly, there is some work going on in that direction. And there's been a project going on for a couple of years looking, especially with the Queenie stocks, about how we manage them throughout the Irish Sea. And of course that should ripple out into all the other areas. And it would be great if we were doing king scallops at the same time, because it's an even bigger industry and there's more gain for everyone if we can manage it in a level, sustainable way.